hopefully see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you.
That's it for the historic face-to-face meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin. There was no deal on Ukraine, either a big one to end the conflict or a temporary ceasefire to halt it for a bit. But the atmosphere between the two men seemed really, well, quite jolly. So what can we take away from this meeting, which seems like a bit of an anticlimax? We will discuss the implications on this episode of the BBC's daily news podcast, Newscast, where I'll also be joined by some of the BBC's other top podcasters. Hello, it's Adam in the studio.
It's Victoria in the studio.
It's Vitaly in Anchorage.
And it's Sarah, right beside Vitaly, here in Anchorage, Alaska.
Right, let's kick off this mega co-production of Newscast, Ukrainecast and Americast. All the casts, and it is 11 minutes past 6 in the UK, where me and Victoria are. Sarah, what's the time? I've lost track of the time difference now.
It's just past 9 o'clock on Friday evening, so it's not just a different time, it's a different day for us, Adam.
Okay, right, just to add to the confusion. So we had the chronology of Putin arriving, and we'll talk about that and the symbolism of that, because that was like a very visual story with a lot of kind of geopolitical implications. Then we had the meeting between the two delegations. That ended up being slightly different from how we had expected it to be. And then just a little while ago, we had this news conference between the two principals, as you'd call them, Trump and Putin. Although, Sarah, to call it a news conference is a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it?
Well, because that suggests that the journalists who were in the room would get a chance to ask questions. That's the traditional form of a press conference. Whereas what happened was we got statements from both of the leaders and then they scurried off the stage before we had a chance to ask them anything. So maybe we should call it a joint statement rather than a news conference.
And Vic, think about it. The number of times we've watched Donald Trump, the number of times he's just turned up to a podium, said some words, and then gone without then answering questions for an hour or 2 hours on every subject. It's unusual, isn't it?
Has it happened since he's come back into the White House for a second time? I can't think of an occasion. He normally loves those press conferences. He talks and talks and talks. He will take as many questions as the assembled members of the press want to throw at him. It was extraordinary, and presumably that's what President Putin wanted. No questions from reporters. And that's what he got. And in Vitaly and Sarah, in terms of what we learned for people who are just tuning in and trying to find out what happened at this summit, is there anything to tell our listeners around the world?
No deal, no ceasefire. Well, bottom line is things stand as they did yesterday, which is kind of what Vladimir Putin wanted. I think he's going home happy. Donald Trump wanted a ceasefire. That didn't happen. For Ukraine, well, the worst case scenario seems to have been avoided, a scenario in which Donald Trump would have offered Russia Ukrainian territory in exchange for a promise of a ceasefire or a peace deal. That didn't happen either, but uncertainty prevails.
Yeah, no deal and no ceasefire, Vitaly. The bizarre thing is there also seems to be no hard feelings about that. I would have thought that Donald Trump would be very disappointed, even possibly angry, about leaving this summit empty-handed. We can talk about this at greater length, but he seems to be reasonably happy. Certainly that's his outward countenance, so we should delve into how on earth that can be.
So you know what, let's dive into just what happened.
The Ukrainian nation, and I've said it multiple times, a brotherly nation, however strange it may sound in these conditions. We have the same roots, and everything that's happening is a tragedy for us and terrible wound. Therefore, the country is sincerely interested in putting an end to it. At the same time, we're convinced that in order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict, and we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe